Konnichiwa, bitches. Hello, losers, and welcome back to another wonderful podcast episode of Right Down the Left, a show about all sorts of random shit by a rambling, nonsensical grown man-child. So, first of all, thank you for putting up with me in the last episode. I know that was pretty heavy-handed. I just wanted to get that crap out of the way so that I could focus on some of the stuff that's actually cool and important. And honestly, I don't really want to talk about politics too much just because we have enough to worry about in our day to day. Like, this is supposed to be escapism. You're supposed to be able to listen to this on a drive or on a walk and not care about anything of real impact. So, as I mentioned in the last episode, today I want to talk about something very near and very dear to my heart, or it was at least, and that's video games. So the reason I wanted to start with this is I had an experience, and I don't know if many of you share it with me, but as I've gotten older, I just don't have the heart for games anymore. I don't have that joy or that excitement to play them, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like day-to-day responsibilities and stress just, causing anxiety and just crushing your spirit. It just isn't the escapism and the relaxation that it used to be. Like, you know, um, and the experience that I had that really perpetrated this was Mad Max. Actually, there were two. There was Outer Worlds and Mad Max. So I'll get into Outer Worlds in a little bit, but Mad Max, number one, obviously, I loved all the Mad Max movies, especially the newest one. And the game was an open world. It had all the elements that I love. It had, customizing a car and modifying weapons, and it had that, mixed with the Arkham Knight battle system. Like, it was an awesome game. It ticked all the boxes for me, and I played about 4 hours of it and just haven't touched it again. And I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I mean, is it me? Is it just games aren't as good these days? I was talking to my friend about this, and I think part of it is, we have so much going on in our lives, and as men, we have so much responsibility that no one likes to talk about or admit that we have, and that's the important thing. No one wants to admit it. But like we work a long day, and then we come back, and then we have kids, and we have a partner that we want to spend time with. We have to help clean and help cook and take care of the kids, and by the time all that's done, you've got like an hour of free time before you have to go to bed and get some sleep so that you can wake up again the next day and have the worst experience of your life. So the last thing you want to do is get into, especially one of these games like Fallout, the Fallout series, or Skyrim, even things like Just Cause, these open world games that can just suck you in and require hundreds of hours to fully experience. I think more than anything, my phone, games on my phone have gotten the most playtime just because I can flop down on a couch and hold my phone in front of my face and just have mindless enjoyment for 10 minutes before I move on to the next thing. So that's what I'm going through right now. And I, I thought I would start by first going through my history of games, in part because nostalgia is fun and I think you'll enjoy it, but also to give you kind of that background. I'm not some person who, I played Pong a few times and now I'm qualified to talk about video games in the current era. I have a very long and loving history with games. It used to be, again, one of my favorite things in the world to do. It still is to a certain extent. It's a social thing with my friends, but it's more about being with them and talking to them than it is about actually playing the game. Like when I'm on my own, I just don't put that much time or effort into it. So I thought I would start with that. So I'm going to talk about what used to be one of my favorite things on the planet. I say used to, not in the industry is woke and dying, OMFG the gays way, but again, I'm in my 40s and I'm finding that worry related to my job, my kids, my dog, and my crumbling relationship have left me devoid of excitement and patience for extended periods of gaming kind of way. So I'm going to talk about my long, rich history with games. I'll subject you to uh, significant details on those things that you probably don't want. But, well, with the recent COVID lockdown, the only game I've played longer than 10 minutes, aside from the ones on my phone, is Fortnite. And again, that's because it allows my close friends and I to get together on a Friday night for a few hours and talk about anything other than video games, especially the game that we're currently playing. I just fucking can't do games anymore. I can't, and it's breaking my heart. So, anyways, I digress. So my first technical exposure to games was one of my many tortuous road trips across the country with my dad to visit family in the East Coast. So as background there, my dad is this like super Russian, and my mom was a newfie, and for whatever reason, his idea of fun was to get him and I in his '80 Suburban and drive from, the middle of the country out to the eastern part of the country. And it's like, 30 days, 30 hours in a truck with no air conditioning, including a 6-hour ferry ride. It was awful. But, you know, we went out there, and my cousin, he was kind of a piece of shit, but he was a piece of shit with an Atari 2600, which at the time meant immediate big dick energy. All right. So now that I think about it, actually, even back when I wasn't a huge console guy, my first love was actually a Commodore 64. So my dad bought me one specifically so I could use it to type and print letters for him to try to scam insurance, which was an awesome introduction for a kid into the ways of the world. But some of the best games of my youth were on that damn thing. Like all the Dragonlance games where you'd make a party of 6 characters, and it just pixelated garbage, but you were learning movement and attack chances and stuff like that. Um, but we even had sleepovers, and there was a game which I can't remember. I think it was actually called Sex Olympics, and I played it with friends during sleepovers. So it was supposed to be like a nude guy railing a chick, and there'd be like an orgasm meter, and you had to get the right rhythm to build it up. I mean, it looked like paint pixels repeatedly colliding, so not the most visually appealing thing, but I was fully invested in that damn thing, even to the point where I don't know if you remember, there were these like computer programming magazines, and at the end of every issue there'd be like a program in BASIC, whether it's a basic game or a graphic animation. It was basic code, and you could type it out and make whatever it was. And it never worked for me because I don't have a coding brain, but it was fun, you know. So that was my gateway into the online world too. I had a 300 baud modem for that thing, and I was proudly a member of several bulletin board systems. The ones where you have to log in one at a time, post shit on a board, and then log out, and then jump back in like an hour later to see if someone responded. God, I feel so old talking about this, but anywho, that was the new hotness for me for a long time, through most of grade school, and then Nintendo came along and just changed everyone's life with that Nintendo Entertainment System. My mom, who was an angel, I never appreciated enough, got me the full-on Super System the Christmas it came out. So that's the one with the light gun and Duck Hunt. As well as that useless fucking robot that took forever to pick up spinning gyros and drop them onto controller buttons. Do you remember that thing? Man, that was a piece of shit. Do you ever just try playing the robot game that came with the system? Like, was holding controllers in each hand? The one where you're an old man, you're supposed to use the robot to either raise the blue or the red pillars so you can get through the level. Fuck that noise. I held the second controller in my hand and powered through those levels like Fred Savage watching a real man annihilate Mario 3. The console, that console was probably one of the only ones I actually loved. I mean, I did like the Super Nintendo, but the NES is just it was so many memories. Some of those games were just awesome, but they were creepy because of the lack of detail and nuance that they could carry in their cartridge. Like Rygar, you wander a desolate shell of a world with a spinny yo-yo disc. Blaster Master, where you either drive your car or jump out of your car or go into a top-down world shooting shit. Faxanadu, Deadly Towers. Remember Deadly Towers? Yeah. This might sound ridiculous or like an exaggeration, but those were the game experiences that really shaped my life. I mean, they allowed me to make friends, and they gave me something in common with other people, even though I was a pretty painfully shy child. And also Castlevania and Ghosts and Goblins can seriously go suck a fuck, honestly. I demolished controllers in fits of absolute rage and despair playing those damn things. Like can the Grim Reaper just fucking die without needing 5 million boomerangs to the face? That was such bullshit. I don't think I actually finished Castlevania. I think I always got hung up on the Grim Reaper, so fuck him. So, anyways, now that I'm babbling about this, one year for Christmas, my mom got me the NES Advantage arcade joystick thing. Remember that? With a turbo button and the game Karnov, which was literally an autobiography of my dad, like a drunk, shirtless Russian running around killing random shit by spitting fireballs at them. Man, I miss that console. It just, I'll get into this in a little bit, but I don't have the capacity to play those games anymore, even out of nostalgia. And I know that classic arcades are a big thing right now, whether it's the one-up arcade cabinets or those little sumo systems where it's like 10,000 games in one. They don't hold up. And I'm sorry, but nostalgia only goes so far. Maybe you're listening to this and you love going back and playing like the original Bubble Bobble, and that's cool. Life is too short. We only have one shot at this, so just do whatever makes you happy. But I can't handle that at all. I've tried. I've tried so hard. I can't deal with it. I mean, now, moving on, I don't have as many fond memories of the Game Boy, and I really didn't stick with it after the original. I didn't even get the original color version, mainly because by then, the only games I was playing was, Hide the Digits and the Ladies, if you know what I'm saying. I was still a virgin until mid-high school. Anyways, I played a game called Final Fantasy Adventure, and I remember that very clearly because that was, I think, so getting back to the NES, I played Final Fantasy on that, but I never really got into it. I didn't get into it till the Super Nintendo. And Final Fantasy 2 and 3 are two of my favorite games of all time from a nostalgia perspective, not a playability perspective. But anyways, on the Game Boy, there was this one called Final Fantasy Adventure. And it was actually, like, it had a cool system. There was one of your character types could be a mutant, and they had the ability to eat the meat of a monster that you killed. And that would then turn them into that monster along with its abilities. So, like, if you killed a dragon, you could eat the meat, and then your mutant would become a dragon, and they would have the fire-breathing power, for example. But it's also the game where you would wander around a dystopian, post-apocalyptic wasteland, eventually finding out that everyone was killed by God, who then you have to kill with a glass sword. And I am not making any of that up. You can look up the game if you want. It was messed up, and they didn't even try to come up with a weird name for God. It was God. You fought God. I was in grade 9 with like a life of optimism and hope in front of me. And now look where I've ended up. I'm in a basement killing spiders and doing podcasts as a mid-40s man just because of that game. So thank you, Squaresoft. So the NES had at the time, again, two of my favorite games. It was Final Fantasy 2 and 3. Now, don't start your shit about the Japanese versus North American naming conventions, okay? You can go bicker to your wife about who cleaned the dishes last and just leave me the fuck alone. Final Fantasy 2 was the one where you played Cecil the Dark Knight and had this great little redemption arc where you end up fighting yourself, but you don't really fight. Like, that's the key. You let your evil self whack the shit out of your new self, and you end up becoming a lady-haired paladin, ultimately leading your party, by the way, to the moon for some reason to fight a bad guy that you only learn about in the final parts of the game, and thus have no emotional attachment to whatsoever. Okay. And Final Fantasy games have had a habit of doing that, and it's one of my issues with the series in general. I think 8 was pretty bad with that as well. 7 was one of the only ones that really got it right. 7 and 9 did a really good job of that. But 3 seems to be everyone's favorite. And I liked it to the point where I tried to tell a chick in first year university res that I was like, just fucking around and ended up composing the music from the opera scene because that's what I thought impressed women in first year university, which was, again, an awesome indication of how often I got laid. Uh, and the console was my weekend with my friends anyways. We would play the shit out of all sorts of horrible multiplayer games, but Final Fantasy 3 had the distinction of being one that I never finished. And it kills me to this day, but I've tried going back multiple times and I can't bring myself to actually finish them. So so fuck Final Fantasy 3. I will give it a chance eventually, I think, if I can eventually bring myself to do it. But I just, right now, I can't even mentally think about the possibility of sitting down and putting like 100 hours into that garbage. Anyways, this will probably make me sound older and more broken than I already am, but like digital downloads of games have kind of destroyed the value we place in them. Like, do you remember with the Nintendo or the N64, you or your mom, usually your mom, paid 60 to 80 bucks per game, like per game. I know that's still the price now, but just think about it back then. That was a lot to invest in a game. When you asked for one for Christmas and you got it, you played the absolute shit out of it because you weren't getting anything else for months. Like I'll talk about this more in another podcast about nostalgia because I think that requires its own topic. But I bought something called a Sumo Sys that I mentioned earlier. It had like 16 consoles and over 10,000 games on it, and I was bored in record time just because there's so much. Like having such easy and fast access to so many things is not a good thing. You think it will be, but it isn't. I mean, again, this would probably be another topic for another time, but porn. You know, like now you can go to a couple of sites and have access to literally anything. So, whereas once the Sears catalog was probably enough, now you need to see like four Japanese chicks choke each other with barbed wire while puking on one another's vaginas or something. Anyways, the PS2, moving on, I'll move on from the Japanese vaginas. The PS2 was really good for two main things. And the first, it allowed me to visit a filthy Chinese mall and watch a dude with a dirty dart hanging out of his mouth mod my console so I could spend the rest of my life holding my breath every time I booted it to play downloaded games. And it basically enabled my hate kind of love, super hate relationship with Final Fantasy just because of the 7, 8, 9, 10. And I will admit something right now. So Final Fantasy 7, from a nostalgia as well as a playability perspective, is my favorite game of all time. And I will die on the hill for this. But to me, I love story more than anything else. And no game had a protagonist or had a more compelling story or compelling characters or compelling bad guy and the relationship between the protagonist and antagonist. Like that, that's how you do a bad guy. You build it up through hundreds of hours of gameplay to this pinnacle moment where you finally get them. Like I was even emotionally invested in a romantic subplot in a game and had to grapple with loss and grief when Aerith died. I mean, I don't remember many games that actually had that level of engagement. It was just incredible. And now I've had other consoles since then, like the PS3. I had a PS4. I have a Nintendo Switch, and I had an Xbox One, which is gone now, thankfully. But my heart has always been with PC gaming. And I think it's because of all those heady C64 days, like the classic LucasArts games, like Full Throttle, TIE Fighter. They did a lot to push that along as well. And I'll stop here really quickly and just say, if you have access to a cheap USB joystick, go to Good Old Games, GOG.com, get TIE Fighter. Especially if you are a Star Wars fan, it honestly has one of the better Star Wars storylines of any game ever made. And again, another thing I'll die on the hill for. And it also has really cool experiences, like you fly as a wingman on Darth Vader's wing to rescue the Emperor. There's a scene where you're loyal to the Emperor, and then there are some traitors who try to defect to the rebellion. And there's this scene where like they try to kill you and you get away. Just trust me, you got to play that game. Like those were the games that formed my adolescence. I still remember dragging a desktop system 3 hours north to a friend's cottage. And we basically hooked this computer up, and we spent the entire weekend taking turns playing Dark Forces for just like 10 hours, 12 hours straight while the other two watched. Just because we loved the experience. Like those were formative experiences. Those were formative years. So it's kind of where I am now in a way. I have a gaming laptop and it's pretty much overkill because the only games I play consistently are just like boring garbage, like Civilizations 5 and 6, and Stellaris. Uh, and even those, again, I'll play for 5 to 10 minutes and then just stop because I'm just tired of the grind. And those used to be my favorite games. Like I spent so much time with Civ 5 especially, and Stellaris I got really into because if you can maintain the patience, it pays off in a huge way if you are a space slash sci-fi fan, because the whole point is that you build a galaxy and almost every planet, every star system has anomalies. It has like research related to ancient alien civilizations, and it's just this wonderment, this sci-fi wonderment of exploring the stars as a new race and uncovering all this stuff. I I've played through it a few times, and that like I don't even like the combat. Like just the exploration is the big thing for me, and I just can't get enough of it. You know, like Just Cause 4 is a good one too, and I jump into that. That's more of my casual, like I want to blow shit up for 20 minutes before I have to go pretend that I love my kids. So that's a good one. And I mean, leading up to this moment, I think some of the big ones for me, like Skyrim and Fallout 3, were big, especially Fallout 3, because again, I go back to that the exploration aspect, the creepiness of uncovering like hidden houses and caves, and like the UFO crash site where you find the ray gun. Like that was an awesome experience. And Skyrim, I mean, I it's one of the only games where I think I've put a total of about, I'd say, 1,000 hours into it across multiple consoles. So I've played it through on PC a few times. I played it on PS4, and I play it on Switch. And to be honest, I still play it on all three of those, and each one has a different character type and a different direction to go in. Like on the PC, I went with the Brotherhood, where I'm like this light armored dual wielding assassin. On PS4, I watched this YouTube video, this hilarious one, how to be a Viking, you know, uh, unarmed badass. So I made a character like that just punches shit to death. And then on the Switch, I just did a full on like mage. Like each hand has a different thing that blasts the shit out of people. So that's the game that keeps on giving. But I mean, I don't even play them that often. Very often. Blah, blah, blah. Again, because I go back to this whole thing of I just don't have the time or the energy. The only thing I play extensively is Fortnite, and that's because on weekends I get together with my close friends and we play squads, and we again talk about anything other than video games, especially the game that we're currently playing. But the whole point of those get-togethers is because, especially with the lockdown, we can't do it in person. That's our chance to talk to one another, to hang out, even if it is virtual. And I'll give Epic Games a lot of credit with that. The ability to have your friends to squad up and to just talk to each other, uh, that is magic that more companies need to embrace, because that has been a huge enabler for sanity. Um, that and the fact that, like, let's be honest, the battle pass is every 3 months, every 4 months, and it's if you have to buy the V Bucks, it ends up being like $11 or $12 or something. And you get a lot for that. So that to me is game value. But it kind of leads me to something that really bothers me, and I read it a lot on gaming sites, and it's this whole console versus PC. And you see a lot of memes about it, how like console gamers be this and PC gamers be this. It strikes me as a similar thing to the Mac versus PC or the iPhone versus Android thing, in that it is fucking ridiculous and stupid, and anyone who actually takes it seriously is the very problem with the country dissolving as we speak. Again, just do what you like, do what you're comfortable with. Yeah, a console probably won't look as good as a PC, but you pay $400 for one, and that's it for 5 years, and everything looks pretty good on it. The PC is going to look a lot better, and you have more flexibility, but you're buying like a $500 video card every year just to keep up with shit. So they both have their pros and cons. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you have fun with, that's what you should go with. And I can't believe I have to tell people this. It's just a stupid argument. So I'm really excited about Cyberpunk 2077. And I say excitement because, again, I come to the point where it looks like a really complex open world game that I will have absolutely no time or patience to deal with. And that breaks my heart because it looks awesome. And the makers of the game have been very vocal on, in websites and social media with their desire to just make a good game. Like they're just focusing on that. And I railed about this in my last podcast in terms of movies, but I repeat it here. If you just focus on making something good, people will come. Like I use the GTA 5 example and now GTA 5 Online, which has become a juggernaut. They just focused on making a good game. They didn't, I think actually at the very beginning it was a bit buggy, but they, for the most part, released a game that right off the bat was deep, it was functional, it was totally open world, and it looked great. And they just focused on that as well as a pretty cool story and some characters that you could actually care about. That's how you do things. And I just wish more would do that. And that, like, all this rambling has led up to this moment of, where I think the industry is now and why, one of the reasons why I don't care about video games anymore. And the example I'll give you is Outer Worlds. And this ties in to the not knowing where to go for honest feedback, honest suggestions when it comes to games. So Outer Worlds, I remember reading a bunch of reviews on it, and pretty much every video game site said, this is the game of the year, this is the most incredible thing ever, you have to play it, it's just stunning, it's stunning and brave, it's awesome, you're going to love it. So I played it, and I'm not going to go so far as to say it was a pile of shit and anyone who likes it is stupid. It was just a giant, like, meh, It to me, it basically felt like Fallout 4, but far less complex or engaging or exciting or fun. So basically, a very piss poor replica of it. And I say that because it has the elements. It has the open world, kind of. You explore different places. You upgrade your equipment, your weapons, and your skills, and all that stuff. So it has that, but it just, I don't know. It was just plain. It didn't have anything that made it stand out. So to call it this incredibly engaging, revolutionary game is just, it's kind of disingenuous at best. And that's kind of what got me started down this thought process. And I think back to other games that have come out, like the Mad Max one. It just, what's the point? There's nothing new being put into these things. There's nothing really creative or exciting, and I'm not sure, where to go from here. And that leads to the other part of the problem, which is video game review sites. And I promised not to get political, and I'm not going to get political. But what I would say is, just go onto Google and search for top games of 2020 on a site like like Games Radar and look at their top anticipated games. All right. Or just go to Kotaku, for God's sakes. Go to Kotaku and look at their headlines. I think I went there yesterday, and out of 10 headlines, 6 of them were about sexual misconduct allegations in different game studios or production companies. And mind you, these days, sexual misconduct means that you try to buy a girl a drink at a bar, and you've basically raped her because of that. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. But there's no place for a person like me or anyone else to go and just get an honest opinion on how fun a game is. Like, how fun is it to play? How, what kind of details are in it? How exciting is it? What can I do with this game? There's no place to go for that anymore because they all seem to have, I wouldn't say agendas. I would say that they're hiring a younger generation to write articles, but the younger generation isn't the younger generation that plays the games. And that is an issue that I know some more right leaning YouTubers have talked about is this idea that game companies aren't making games for gamers anymore. They're making them for game reviewers because they want those really solid reviews. They want a game to sound incredible just to get some sales without actually thinking about the playability and appealing to the broader audience. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think GTA 5 has done so well because it doesn't try to appeal to reviewers. And that's not entirely fair because a lot of reviewers have rated it well. But it focuses on giving players as much value as possible and not doing it for reviewers, doing it for players. And I think Outer Worlds, to a large extent, was made for reviewers more than it was made for players because anyone who actually plays games didn't get anything special out of that game compared to something like a Fallout or a Skyrim or other open world games. It just didn't. I mean, there's nothing new or exciting about that, but the reviewers were eating it up because a lot of the female characters had short hair and looked like men, which was awesome. So that's kind of the struggle I have, and maybe that's been keeping me from trying new games or giving games a fair shake. I typically look at a game review and I'll feel the exact opposite of what the reviewer felt. And I do this with movies, and I do it with video games too, to be honest with you. If there are unanimously bad reviews, oh, sorry, honey, I just ran over my dog. If there are unanimously bad reviews of a game from game reviewers, I will probably love it. I'll give it a shot. And the flip side also applies as well. If there are unanimously good reviews of a game, like every single person loves this thing and thinks it's the best game ever, I'm going to probably steer clear of it or wait until one of my friends tries it and get their advice on it. So this kind of boils down to where I am with games right now. And I don't know where to go from here. Even some of the games coming down the pipe, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and, like I said, Cyberpunk 2077. Like, I should be excited about those. I should be, waiting with bated breath for those to release so I can try them. And I can't. I don't have that excitement anymore. Maybe the industry as a whole or the game releases over the past bunch of years have just crushed me. I don't know. I don't know what to say. But what I will do is I will now give you recommendations for some of the games that are out right now or games that came out in the past that you might want to give a shot because they are actually quality games that might be worth some of your hard-earned time. And I'll start with one that I just discovered, and I'm shockingly into it because it's open world and it requires like thought to get into it, and it has save points, which fuck save points. But Horizon Zero Dawn so far it's a pretty fantastic game. It's a really cool concept. Like it's kind of the future. Like there were humans that were super advanced, and then they're gone, and humans live on as tribes people, and there are machines like robots that roam the land pretending to be horses and raptors and stuff like that, and you hunt them. But it's a really cool mix of sci-fi and I guess fantasy. It plays a lot like Just Cause, including the map. I don't know if they use the same engine, to be honest with you, but the story has been really cool. There hasn't been any, eye-rolling political stuff in it. It's just the mechanics are good, and I'll say right now, apparently there's an issue with the PC version. I'm playing on PC, and it has been amazing, especially with the most recent NVIDIA drivers. It's been awesome. It's been really stable, really smooth. I don't have a major card. I think I've got like a 1660 Ti, and I'm getting like 90 frames a second. It's a really cool experience. I highly recommend it. If you can go back and you haven't tried Skyrim before, that is a definitive game. And even now, if someone didn't experience it before or someone played through the basic one, I think now you buy it and it comes with all of the DLCs bundled in, and it adds like hundreds of hours of unique and new storylines and gameplay. And it's just, if you are into just wandering a land and exploring and finding all sorts of little hidden things, Skyrim will just definitely do it for you. And as I mentioned before, it's an older game, but TIE Fighter is one of my top games of all time. You got to get into that one. Pretty please get into that. Stellaris is, it's not the most visually exciting game, and it's not the most exciting game in general. It's kind of like I don't even know how to describe it. It's kind of like a Civilizations, but in space. But instead of like minute details related to your cities and stuff like that, you explore and take over star systems and expand your galaxy. And it's really interesting from a I wish real life was this exciting related to sci-fi, right? Like I wish we were out in the stars finding new star systems and anomalies like ancient alien probes orbiting a moon in the star system. Like that would be my dream come true. And the civilizations are always, they're always good just for uh, you know I don't really challenge myself with civilizations, to be honest with you. I always set it so that there's only one opponent, and I immediately create settlers and just surround their one city, and they're basically my little punching bitch the entire game. And my favorite thing to do is right before I finish the game with a scientific victory by sending a ship to Mars, I nuke their city. Just to be a dick. Just I nuke their city, kill 2/3 of their population, and then blast off to Mars and start a colony and say fuck you, which is always a fun experience. I'm trying to think. There was one other game that I was actually getting into. Okay, so I wouldn't say I'm getting into it because I've always been into it, and I think my next episode is going to be about. I think you know how I mentioned in the first episode, I said that I would talk about some of the things that I loved, but also things that are new that I newly love. One of those things is Warhammer. And I have a weird history with it, which I will talk about in the next episode. But the bottom line is that the entire universe of Warhammer is just so manly. Even though there are women in it and they play a big role, it's such a manly universe. There's nonstop brutal war. There's like 8 or 9 different races and factions, and they all have devastating weapons and kill each other. It's just fucking awesome. And the games that have come out for it are they vary, because there's been a lot of games that came out for the Warhammer universe that I've never heard of, and I just recently discovered them. Like there's a multiplayer shooter that you can get on Steam for free, where you can play as either Chaos or Space Marines, and you choose your loadout, and you just go kill each other. So that's cool. There's a bunch of Space Hulk games, and the latest one is like a first-person shooter where you have a squad of two others, and I know it sounds boring, but you're in Terminator armor, and Terminator armor is basically like you're a walking tank, and you have these auto cannons that are chain guns that are the length of a human being that just, oh my god, and the bullets that they shoot in this universe are called mass reactive rounds. So every single bullet is like a little mini nuclear explosion when it hits. Like it's such a cool universe, and the games are so good, especially the Dawn of War games. So my favorite has actually been Dawn of War 2 Retribution, and it's a real-time strategy, but with the exception of you're not creating a base and building out from there. It's more you have your four characters and you walk through a map and you achieve objectives with these characters, and you can capture access points and call in reinforcements like dreadnoughts, these walking tank things, regular tanks, other tactical squads. The other thing that I like about it is, number one, you can play as one of like six different races, so I like that variety. But each character, you can unlock new weapons and armor for them and make them even more terrifying. The one thing I don't like is, well, actually, I like and I don't like it. So I don't like that in Retribution you can't apply Terminator armor to your heroes, but the trade-off is that you can call in Terminator squads to be your reinforcements. And I'm getting really inside baseball with this right now. I promise I'll clear this up in the next episode. But the bottom line is that the Dawn of War stuff, like Warhammer and Dawn of War, that it's really tickled my pickle right now. Like I have a semi just thinking about it. And just to clarify with you, a semi is not aggressive and it's not sexual. As a man, you know this. You know that going over a hill, you get the butterflies in your stomach and you get a semi. You're going like 200 kilometers an hour on a motorcycle, you get a little semi. Like that's a natural physiological reaction to excitement. Now, if I told you that Warhammer gave me a full-on throbbing erection, you're probably getting fucked in the ass. So we're going to avoid talking about that. We'll just stick with the semi. But anyways, this has been another rambling, incoherent episode, and I'm sure most of you hate it and are not going to listen anymore, which is totally understandable. I never said I was good at this, just that I would talk about some of this stuff and let you decide for yourself whether or not you enjoy it. I would love to talk to you guys if anyone is listening and they want to share some of their experiences with video games, if they're still excited about them, if there are any games in particular that have come out recently that I should give a shot, that might rekindle my love for the industry. Please do. Like go for it. I'd love to talk about that and discover new things. I'm always up for that. And I don't want this to sound like, this entire episode probably makes it sound like I hate games, I never want to play them again. Nothing could be further from the truth. Like I want to like them. I really do. And I think that if I can be exposed to some really good hidden gems, I will get back into that. The new Doom game that came out, for example, it almost did it for me. I just found the chainsaw finishes repetitive, and I just didn't get as invested into that as I probably should have been. But it was still a good game. Like I enjoyed playing it while I played it, but I haven't played anything in a while that's really captured my attention. Like Horizon Zero Dawn might fit the bill. It might. And we'll find out as time goes on. I'll give you guys an update over the next few episodes as to whether or not I'm still playing it or I got tired of it. And before I finish, side note to the Horizon thing, I actually didn't know it was a game until they announced it for PC. And just hear me out. So on Instagram, I don't really post, but I follow a bunch of like funny meme sites and stuff. And I was following one for a while that was like, I think it was called Horizon Zero Dawn. I just thought it was some person who did cosplay because it was always like women dressed up the same way in this kind of like Native American outfit with a bow, an arrow, and like feathers hanging from their hair and these big red manes. And I just thought this is a weird cosplay thing from an anime or something. And I thought the chicks were usually pretty hot, but yeah. So I like everything about the game so far, so I definitely recommend that. And that reminds me, I'm going to uninstall Mad Max because just fuck it, I'm tired of it already. Ah, boy. So, if you're still with me, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys listening. If any of you are, feel free to let me know if these are actually rambling and incoherent, and I should just stop and stick with my day job, which I totally understand and would accept willingly as feedback. I am on Instagram if you want to jump on me there and send me some cool stuff, or just email me at rightdowntheleft@gmail.com. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys. And next episode is going to be a barn burner. Take care.